Hello everybody. Welcome back. This is the Big Bad Anime Channel. My name is Noah. I am your host. I am thrilled, excited, and exuberant to be here. Thank you guys for joining us. Today we're doing a little bit of Mecha Madness. I had a sketch going that it ended up going both better than I expected, and also it was a real challenge. So I figured this was a perfect opportunity to walk out some of the things that I've been talking about in some of my other videos in terms of taking risks, failing, and just embracing the process and seeing where you can take it and seeing what can happen. Throughout this drawing process, I was really just trying. So I was shooting in the dark and seeing what would happen. I think that's one of the joys of taking it as an adventure instead of having a clear-cut blueprint of where you're headed. At least for myself, I know when it comes to drawing, painting, any kind of mechanics or engineering, that's a real weak point for me. It's a lot more comfortable for me to draw people, for me to draw animals, even objects. But when you get into machinery, there's a certain amount of know-how that comes with it that really can be intimidating. And like with anything, especially in the creative process, you have to go through it to get through it. And the only way to get further down the path is to get some mileage. So having that same sense of play and exploration, even with things that are maybe uncomfortable, or maybe even, you're finding a fair amount of resistance internally while you're creating, which I was definitely during this piece. There's some, you'll see later, there's some spots that are really need some help. And I just didn't know exactly how to fix it right away. So I just keep working it. I think that's also why I was working within the VFX with this kind of blue flame effect so heavily, even in the beginning, is because I was trying to find any way to just sell it to myself, to get myself excited, to find that, that little bit of extra inspiration that'll help me push it over the hump and find something that I like in there and fix the parts, stay dedicated enough to fix the parts that aren't working for me. And when it comes to doing VFX, well, just generally speaking, I would highly recommend the Level Up channel on YouTube. Shout out to the Level Up guys. It's a great series. I think they stopped doing it. But while it was running, I think it was well over 100 episodes, and they had all kinds of people from the industry, professionals, people work in concept art, in illustration, in animation. And one episode in particular that stood out to me that really was helpful was the episode that they had Ross Draws on the Level Up channel. Shout out to Ross Draws, also another fantastic channel. Check him out. And Ross, he actually went through a step-by-step of how he works his gradient maps and how he gets these kind of fire effects. And that's what I use. And so I would recommend to go to the source, and I want to give credit where credit is due. But that was a great tip, and I've used it ever since. I'm going through this little blue fire effect with my smudge tool, and I'm trying to I'm either erasing, actually right now I think, smudge tool. I'm going through and just varying things up from just the straight brush strokes. I feel like oftentimes brush strokes are you can see what they are. They look like what they are. And when you get into some of the smudge and the blending, things get a little more organic look and look a little less digital or a little less transparent. I try to hide some of the techniques that I use. And when it comes to designing, or concept design in general, I try to start with the concept before the design. The cart behind the horse. And And the way that I try to think about that is, what is the purpose of this in this case, what function does this mech serve? And my thinking was this would be a low orbit drop ship mech. Like, it would be a mech that designed to drop from, I don't know, a couple hundred feet, maybe up to 1,000 feet in low orbit. Some sort of military campaign, or obviously, he's got a big laser gun, so that's going to be used in some sort of shootout. It's. And my thinking was, so he's got to be kind of tanky. He's going to be facing some heavy resistance, probably heavy enemy fire, and that help. He's also got to have some legs that would absorb the shock of the drop, and maybe something that helps him glide or break the fall, so it's not just terminal velocity all the way to the ground. And that's why he's got these little short wings. They'd have to be a lot bigger if he was actually going to fly with them, but just to glide and to kind of direct his descent. And that gives me that starting point, or that general direction to head out into. And that gives me kind of some basic ideas of what would work and what wouldn't work. And also I can add some different visual effects in terms of the dust cloud that he would leave as he's landing and gliding and sliding. I also wanted this to be a mech that had seen some action. He has some battle damage, and just knowing he's not fresh off the production line, knowing that he's taken some dings and some dents here and there, gives me some room to just design in all kinds of little nicks and scratches and fun stuff. As you can see, I'm also looking for the edges of the plates of metal. I think that's where you're going to see more scratches, just typically on any machinery, especially that's got some sort of powder coat or paint on it. It's right around the edges that get the majority of the wear and tear. But then you're also going to see places that, it took an impact of some sort. And knowing what type of coat finish the metal has will help you know how much shine and reflectivity to add in. So in this case, I didn't want him to be a really shiny, metallic looking mech. I wanted this to have a kind of a rugged, beat up quality to it, almost like cast iron or a darker metal. A lot of that has to do with just the action he's seen, the dirt and the grime. And then it gives me room to go from the darker and show the battle damage, the impacts, the scratches more prominently, because they'll stand out more. And it kind of tells a story of the character. Their armor, their gear, what they're wearing will tell a story of how far they've come, where they've been, what they've done, what was done to them, all kinds of things. So these little impacts tell a story. Maybe a story of the last battle this mech was in. And the design sells some of the ideas you're trying to push with the character. So they tell us who they are. Typically, sharper shapes are used in more antagonist characters, bad guys. So the silhouette will have more kind of spikes or just sharp edges, typically. And then good guys, or people who are supposed to be the protagonists, tend to be more constructed of rounder shapes or square shapes. And this just comes from our kind of evolutionary nature, I think. Animals that are a threat tend to have spikes or horns or something that could stab us and hurt us. And so we know to stay away. And then, fluffy things, rounder things, tend to be less of a threat. And so we can kind of identify just at a glance if this is supposed to be a good guy or a bad guy just through their just through their silhouettes and just through the shapes that they're constructed with, both external, like the outer edges of the silhouette, but also internally. The shapes that you choose inside of the character's silhouette also tell that story. So with this character, he's got a kind of mix of both, and that's what I was thinking. Kind of an anti-hero or a good guy who has mixed allegiances, or you know, somebody that feels intimidating, but you're glad they're on your side. I think anti-heroes have become a real fixture in media in the last years. Anyways, this has just been part 1. We'll be moving into part 2 here in a little bit. Thank you guys for joining me. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate you. We are the Big Bad Anime Channel. Having a great time doing the thing, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.